This is my 2020 Turbo Levo Comp. It's the first one delivered in the United States as far as I know. I got it on September 3rd, 2019. So why did I get a 2020? Well, it differs from the 2019 in that it has a 700 watt-hour battery instead of a 500 on the Comp model. In 2019, you had to get an Expert or an S-Works in order to get that larger battery. And then the 2019 was a significant redesign compared to the 2018. It has the 2.1 Mag S motor, and that's 15% smaller than the 2018 motor. Also, it has a magnesium housing instead of aluminum. In fact, the 2019 aluminum version of the bike is lighter than the 2018 carbon bike. Also, the base level Turbo Levo in 2019 didn't have a dropper seat post. So that's what made me want to get the Comp, to get the dropper seat post as well as the larger forks, because the base level in 2019 had 32 millimeter forks. What I didn't know is that in 2020 they fixed both of those issues. So now it has 35 millimeter forks even on the base model and a dropper post. I didn't know that, or else maybe I would have just gotten the base model, because the 500 watt-hour battery is actually pretty good. You can go about 35 miles of trail riding with it. With a 700, I can go, I would say, 50 miles. I'm not sure I'll ever ride 50 miles, but it's nice not to have it to charge it on every ride. So I weighed this bike, and it's 51.5 pounds with pedals and tubes in a size medium. And that's with the 700 watt-hour battery. Compare that to a 2019 Giant Trance E+2 that I had last week, and that was 54.5 pounds with the smaller 500 watt-hour battery. So even though this battery is larger, it's 3 pounds less than the Giant. I spent a lot of time riding the Giant so I could compare the two bikes. The Giant's Yamaha motor was actually quite nice. It felt natural. It didn't make very much noise. You could hear it a little bit. Now this Brose motor is definitely better. And really, this motor is pure perfection. The Yamaha was excellent, but this is still better. And if you didn't try this and the Yamaha back to back, I think most people would be happy with the Yamaha. So this one's just completely silent. Even to the rider, you can't hear it. Whereas the Yamaha, the rider can hear it, but people that you pass can't. Another thing about the Yamaha motor on the Giant bike is that it has some drag when it's off. So it would be pure misery to ride it if the battery died, or even if you wanted to do it just for fitness purposes. This Brose motor doesn't seem to have any drag, and riding it without the power on or with a dead battery, it simply feels like it's a heavy bike. It's about 20 pounds more than a dual suspension bike that doesn't have a battery and motor. One thing about the Giant was that it had Shimano brakes that I really liked. I'm used to them. They have short pull, they have a lot of bite. I can still modulate them, so I would rather have those than the SRAM brakes on this bike. These brake levers are not adjustable for length of pull. The Giant had Fox suspension, which felt a lot more planted to me. This Turbo Levo has a Lyric fork, and I find that on the aggressive side. I'm only 140 pounds or 64 kilograms, and I think the valving is just set up for someone who weighs quite a bit more. So I had to lower the pressure. I used the app, and it recommended for my weight 75 psi in the front and 168 in the back. And I had to go to 115 psi in the back. Very low. But I didn't bottom out even though I tried. And the front, I'm at 65. I did bottom out at 60, so I have it at 65, and we'll see what happens. If it bottoms out when I try hard, then I'll go up to 70. But it's getting to the point where I wish it had some high-speed dampening control, because when I hit obstacles, I feel more of an impact than I do on the Fox suspension on either the Giant or my manual Giant Trance. But the suspension really bothered me on my first ride, and now that I have the pressure way down, it's become acceptable to me. But if you weighed more, if you weigh like 70 or more kilograms, I think it will be just fine. And that's for almost everyone else but me. As far as the rebound setting, I'm at +3 from closed. The app recommended +7 on the front and back, and I'll probably continue to play with that. But it doesn't really seem to address the issue of the bounciness that I felt. I converted these tires to tubeless, and they already had rim tape on them, which was awesome, and it came with valves, which was awesome. I have the PSI down to 12 in the front and 15 in the back, which I'm sure sounds very low to most people, but due to my weight and the fact that these are 30 millimeter internal rim width and they're 2.6 tires, it's, I think, where I want it to be. I may add 1 PSI, but it seems just about perfect. I will say that this came with a 2.6 inch tire in back, even though it's listed on the spec sheet as 2.3, and I'm happy with that. The geometry of this fits me perfectly. I really like it. It feels shorter than the Giant. It feels more lively than the Giant. And only thing I could say is the handlebars are on the wide side, but that's just how bikes are now. If I really want to, I could take 20 millimeters off each side. It would probably be perfect for me. Or I may just get used to the super wide bars, although I do ride through trees where sometimes it's actually difficult to get through. I'm happy that there's a little toolkit under the water bottle cage. I did lose mine already though, because I put it back in and I didn't put it in properly and it bounced off. As for the tires, I'm a little skeptical of them. I loved the DHF tire on the Giant. I immediately felt super secure on it, whereas when I rode this bike, I could feel it slipping on some damp roots. They weren't even that wet, they were just slightly damp, and it was a little unnerving. But it may have been that the suspension had too much air in the spring, so the jury's still out on that. I'm considering replacing the front tire with a DHF just to be sure, but that may not be necessary. I just have to learn more about these butcher tires. Now let's talk about the electronics. One place that the Turbo Levo excels is the app. It's called Mission Control, and it works really great. It even will use the torque sensor in the pedals to measure the human input to the pedals and send that to Strava as if you had a watt meter. The Giant doesn't do that and sends the motor's wattage to Strava, which makes no sense because I really want to track my human effort. And in fact, that's one of my concerns about an e-bike in general, is that it's hard to track your human effort. But this bike does that, which makes all the difference for me, and actually was the entire reason why I was able to rationalize getting an e-bike at all and still be able to track my fitness. So I'm really happy with how this does that, and few to none other e-bikes do that. There's also a great third-party app called Blevo that you can get for Android or the iPhone, and it does some really crazy things, like it can monitor your heart rate and you can set a target, and it will adjust the bike's assistance to keep you in that heart rate zone. So let's say you're riding with friends who are super fast, and on a manual bike your heart goes up to like 180 keeping up with them, but you don't want that. You just want your heart to be at 140. You can set this app to 140 and you can keep up with your friends, and if your heart rate starts to creep up, the bike will raise the assistance so that you can maintain your speed and keep up with your friends and still stay in that heart rate zone. And if you don't have a heart rate monitor, that's not a problem, because you could also set a wattage target. You could say, I want to pedal at 200 watts, and the bike will use the app to adjust your assistance. If you're putting out more wattage than that, it will raise the assistance. And if you creep down to like 100 watts, it will lower the assistance to keep you in that zone. So that's super useful. And that's not the only reason to get this app. I also like how it uploads to Strava a bunch of statistics. So it will tell you what percentage of the ride was your human effort and what percentage was the bike, and how many watt hours from human and watt hours from the battery. And it also has a really nice moving map that works better than Strava's. Strava's moving map doesn't rotate as you turn, and it's been like that for years and years. And they must not have any developers, because they haven't fixed it, even though people have been complaining for the last 3 or 4 years about that. But the Levo app has a really nice moving map that you could put GPXs into it, either from email or Google Drive, or direct connect to a computer, and then they follow really well. And it also has some really nice readouts that you could see how, what your bike's doing and what the assistance level is, what the motor wattage is, and your pedal wattage as you ride. So if you're into data, I really like the app for that. So this bike, I'm loving it in general. It's not perfect in that the brakes, tires, and suspension aren't exactly what I would have picked, although I think they're reasonable choices for people in general. And the good thing is, the stuff that is not easy to change, like the frame and the motor and the battery, are dead on perfect. And in fact, this frame, it's aluminum, but look at these welds. They're ground down and polished, and it looks fantastic. I'm really happy I got the aluminum one, didn't spend more money on the carbon. And, if anything, that gives me more budget to change things like the tire and the brake levers, and really set up the bike the way I would want it. So I'm loving it. Super fun to ride. And that is all I have for now.